Hi everyone, my name's Tashi Dorjee, a startup enthusiast, newly dubbed father, and the head of Flex for Australasia at JLL. Today I'm going to be your host for the Unpacking of APAC mini-series. It's an exclusive series at This Week in Coworking, where we're essentially going to look at what makes Australia tick from a future of work, office, and a co-working perspective. Now, a quick word from our sponsors before we get started. OfficeRnD Flex. It's the ultimate platform that helps co-working and flex spaces streamline operations, wow their members, and grow faster. Learn more at officernd.com/flex. Syncaroo. Now, Syncaroo keeps your best people unblocked through managed integrations, profit-protecting automations, and understandable tech guidance. Hop in and learn more at syncaroo.com. Ascensus. Ascensus is a global provider of software and technology for commercial real estate, helping the world's leading landlords and flex workspace operators deliver seamless digital experiences. Head over to ascensus.tech and let them know we sent you. Today we're joined by Ash, who is a senior customer success manager at OfficeRnD. He has over 11 years experience in Australia's corporate real estate ecosystem and flex workspace industry. His expertise spans across workplace strategy and data analytics for major companies like ANZ, Telstra, and IAG. After consulting with JLL, Ash transitioned to PropTech, software as a service, 5 years ago, and now supports clients in the flex workspace sector. Before I even start with the random stuff, how was your holiday? Good?
It was fantastic. It was hot as it
Yeah.
is, but it's for me something special because that's where I was born. So it's going back home.
That's so cool. Wait, hang
Yeah.
on. So where were you born again?
So Indian origin, but fifth generation Fiji Indian. So born in Fiji, and family of migrants, right? So we moved to New Zealand when I was 13. The whole family moved to Auckland. Mum and dad are still in Auckland
Yeah.
there, and then moved to Melbourne. So that's been the journey. But yeah, Fiji
That's
Fiji is
so
Fiji is
cool.
home.
Man, like similarly for me, background of migrants, like my grandparents grew up in the Great Eastern Circus. So my father was the strongman and my grandma was the trapeze artist, and they met when they were child performers. And
Wow.
they came to Australia, and that was on my mum's side, and they had a Nepalese background. And my dad was from Tibet, so he was the first Tibetan to come to Australia, and he was the Dalai Lama's bodyguard. So very rich cultural backgrounds, but I'm first generation Australian. So when they moved here, unfortunately, I can't really speak a lot of Tibetan or Nepalese because they really wanted me to be Aussie, to assimilate here.
Yeah.
But now I'm old enough, and well, getting really old now. It's when you start really valuing those things and wanting to go back.
Yeah.
Um, that's really cool, man. I didn't know that about you. That's awesome. And we've actually got a site that we're setting up flex co-working stuff in Auckland, which I'm
Nice.
sure
Yeah.
will your team will know about and hear about because we'll be using you guys in the back end for that, which we'll get to. But before we even start on all of that stuff, could you please tell me a bit about your journey leading up to Office R&D? Because I'm always fascinated to see how people land in this industry because you don't necessarily go to uni and study it, or you have an aspiration to be like, hey, one day I want to be in co-working. No one ever says that. Well, some people may,
Yeah.
but for me,
Probably
that
now they
wasn't the
do.
case. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what was yours?
I mean, my journey's been probably, I wouldn't say it's very interesting in the sense. Went to university, studied accounting and economics, and was very good analytically in terms of data. And then my first, and now I reflect back, in my first job outside of university was at Air New Zealand. I was in revenue management. And I know you've mentioned this before in terms of what the airlines and the hotels are doing. So I reflect back and I really look back on that experience and where flex co-working industry is going to what airlines are doing. So that was my first stint, and I did revenue management and really learned about how, similar to what co-working spaces do, is learning about how to maximize the revenue on a airline. And once the airline takes off, the space is gone. It's a sunk cost. So how do you actually optimize that, and all the tech that goes into, and all the people behind that makes it happen? And then after that was at ANZ Bank. That's where I really got to learn more about how big banks run, the data analytics, and doing a lot of reporting, and getting really into the rhythm of that thing. And then with ANZ, I moved to Melbourne, and a head office, and that's when I landed into corporate real estate. And it was just by sheer luck that I landed in corporate real estate, and I've never intended to be in that. But that was in June of 2012 when I moved to Melbourne, and what, 12, 13 years now I've been in the same industry, and I love it. And I think uh, and I've had some like really good managers and leaders and friends along the way that I've learned a lot from. And part of the stint was at JLL. So after ANZ, I moved to JLL. I was on the Telstra account, and there was a big beast in itself with the number of office buildings Telstra had in Melbourne and Sydney, and really getting to learn about how you do occupancy planning and how data is such a fundamental part of those decision makings.
It's funny you say that because a lot of these big companies, whether it's a Telstra or a bank, really need help with all of the excess space that they have right now.
Yeah,
And subletting is not the only answer. I've spoken to some of relatable brands in those industries without naming names on how to even set up their own co-working site because they've got all these hibernating floors. How do we monetize it? How do we
yeah,
brand it as ours? Instead of trying to turn it into a WeWork 2.0, it could be a very curated community. So then the
yeah,
corporate culture benefits from it as well. Part of the AGM or annual report might be we need to speak to our customers in a different way rather than just our off-the-shelf products. Imagine if they had a co-working hub for them to drop in and use. So it's fascinating your background because the fact that you've lived and breathed ANZ and Telstra, I actually feel like you would have very serendipitous contributions to some of these flex solutions. I might actually give you a
yeah.
call because I'm working on a couple of things and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Because you got that background. Random question, really random, and excuse my quirky way of thinking. But because you were in charge of revenue generation for airlines, right? And this is my very
Mm,
high level understanding, it can get down to the greediness of do we put nuts in the plane because of that cost? What paint do we use? Because it makes the plane heavier and therefore
yeah,
consume more fuel on the flights. It gets to that level of
yeah.
detail. What would be just randomly an equivalent cost cutting or revenue generation thought process from all the way to the minutia of the nuts on the plane for co-working?
I think this is a very fundamental question, right? Because the margins are very thin in co-working, just like airlines. And I was actually reflecting on that last night about it. I said, well, you've got airlines that make billions and billions of dollars in revenue, but then the profits might only be in millions or not even a profit, which is very similar to for co-working spaces, and it is the same thing, and the cost is always to the back of your mind. I mean, speaking with my customers and customers in APAC especially, you've got large operators to the really small operators, especially the really small ones. The cost is a very big thing, and I think one thing that they think of is human resources, so that's obviously a big cost. But I think sometimes what they
When you
lose
say
sight,
human resources, you mean the on-site staff, right?
on-site staff,
Yeah.
yeah. So and I think this is, I mean, short term, you may have to make those decisions where you need to cut cost, and it happens and it will happen. But in terms of how you balance that with the right investment in technology, with the onset of AI, and how to actually jump on that and use that, because you need to spend money to make money. That's fundamentally the rule, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, because the on-site one is a predicament. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because trust me, I've challenged my team in a very soft and supportive manner. Hey, can we do this smaller site with less people so that there's less of a cost? But the conversation always comes down to the experiences impacted and even the operational viability. So artificial intelligence is always positioned right now, at least, as a tool that can take a lot of the mundane tasks off
Mm,
their plate, however, cannot replace an individual. So it's almost a scenario of you've got two and a half or three people on a site. AI can be introduced to take 20% of their day-to-day operations off their plate, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can reduce that on-site resource by 20%. It just means they've got 20% extra availability or the already allocated resource to elevate something else or improve something else. Because, you know, running a co-working space is a lot like a restaurant. Front of house might look beautiful and seamless, but back of house can be a shit
Shit
fuck.
show.
Well, I was
Yeah.
about to swear. I might have to be a shit storm. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like if you speak to an ops team and you're like, "Hey, we're getting rid of this just because we're looking at different ways to increase our margin," you're gonna get the middle finger pretty quickly, and rightfully so, because they're in the
Yeah.
trenches and making it work. So but then it all depends on how you manage the expectation. It's almost like I find existing sites that are looking for AI and these kind of tools to improve efficiencies need
Yeah.
to have a bit of a reality check where it'll help you optimize it, but not necessarily cut too many costs, unless you can tell me
Yeah.
otherwise of examples where it's worked. But new sites that are being set up, where you design and build it in a way where it's largely self-sufficient or positioned in a manner, especially if it's a landlord-owned asset where it's not meant to have a huge hospitality
Yeah.
element, it's just meant to be a self-service one, then
Mm.
yeah, artificial intelligence could, in theory, replace a headcount or two, which I think will be big. But in terms of where the future of flex goes, but I'll leave that for later in this discussion. So,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying make sense, or am I
It,
full of BS? Because you've seen examples where AI
yeah.
has cut a cost. It is
Yeah.
BS. Okay, tell me,
No,
tell,
no,
tell
no,
me where.
there definitely isn't, because like what you mentioned about those sites, and we do have customers who have this really provide those really hands-on service. They've got a community team, a reception staff who would
Mm.
book meeting rooms for customers and even take a cup of coffee over to the office. And they're the customers who are also looking at really self-managed sites. And this is, I think, it's a lot easier when it's a new site where you can go in, put in those access control systems like Salto, anything else where everything can be on an app. You just go in, and customers in Singapore that we have already do that. And but I think it is not. It won't be suitable for every co-working operator. It really depends on the type
Yeah.
of customers you're after. I'll give you one example of a customer in Singapore. They have got a space which is basically beyond self-sufficient. You go in, there's no one there, and those
Mm.
customers really need the privacy. Even the walls are soundproof where you cannot see into the offices, but it's a co-working space, and that is designed for that. So you might have lawyers maybe, or certain people who run businesses where they cannot have a branding, that no one knows they're working there, so they provide those more of a hidden space, and they're all really self-sufficient. And how they do it is all have technology, access on yourself. Go in, if you need something, you just do it through an app. You might have QR codes on rooms, so if you want something, you scan a code to launch something. If something is broken, you don't need to call someone, and that's already happening.
So, do you reckon Singapore is ahead as an example, or is there a particular? And the only reason I ask that is there is a city I need to keep my eye on, who is utilizing your services or Office R&D's, pattern
Yeah.
recognition and all that stuff more than other regions, because
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to see who the front runner is, and even if you're not necessarily in that space head on, just watch what they're doing, and that's almost
Yeah.
like a litmus test or a canary in the coal mine for some cool stuff that you can get
Yeah.
inspired and bring over to Australia. Like,
Yeah.
is there a region that you think is pretty forward thinking right now?
I mean, if we talk about Singapore, like how it is that blue zone,
Yeah,
alluding to that Netflix documentary. But I mean, I see fundamentally, maybe it's just a cultural thing in terms of the approach is really that hospitality, service, and front end.
right.
But it might look in the front end that, hey, this really good, everything is on point, the service is there, the facilities are there, really really high quality, high end fixtures and fittings. But in the back end, I don't necessarily see a lot of investment in AI and tech. A lot of things are being done
Right.
still quite manually, but the thinking is there, they're already doing it. And I think one thing
Mm,
our Singapore customers do really well is that they really run efficiently, and they, even from a system utilization point of view for OfficeRnD, they really push the boundaries and want to use everything that we can offer. Whereas
mm,
if I look at some other customers in say Vietnam or Philippines, they're probably trying to catch up. And
right.
Australia sort of is in the middle. We've got customers that are trying to do, but I think they have a different challenge with cost and really getting to fill
Man,
their
cost is a big one.
spaces.
There's a saying when I used to be an entrepreneur, even though I try and bring those entrepreneurial qualities to the JLL Flex team.
building this business, if you can make it work in Australia, you can make it work
Well,
anywhere because costs are so
I
high.
agree. I
It's
totally agree
so
with that.
high.
Yeah.
I still remember the first startup I did, well, second startup I did where it was co-working, where we turned restaurants into co-working spaces in
Yeah.
Australia. Did that for 6 years. And we had a competitor in the US called Spacious. And we admired what they were doing, but at the same time, their cost base would have been significantly lower because minimum wage over there would have been close to
Yeah.
nothing. So there were staffing sites and all that kind of stuff when I was like, I can't do that. If I put a head count in this bloody restaurant to run as a co-working space, it does not work. But the
Yeah.
advantage of that was it forced us to kind of lean into technology and be
Yeah.
self-proficient and evolve in a very lean manner. All that kind of stuff. It's really interesting that you say Singapore, even though they're kind of hands-on and very self-sufficient, and which is why, hospitality might be a thing. From what I've been reading and even seeing within JLL, without giving away too much in other divisions,
Mm.
when it comes to artificial intelligence, especially, it's kind of useless unless you've got a really good pool or foundation of data that's been
Yeah.
input, right? So there's regions that in theory, AI, if you look at it as a newbie, could be like, it would be so good if we could put artificial intelligence in this city or region. But because people are in the buildings and they're not recording that data in their own day-to-day manner, and it's sitting in a bloody pile of paper somewhere on a spreadsheet that, gets not saved properly,
Yeah.
AI is not really going to help there because they need a controlled source of data that's categorized and everything for it to pull from. So even though Singapore, to your point, I reckon they're almost primed for AI because if they've got all of that back of house stuff like really well organized, just because it's culturally that's what they do, it's food for thought for them to just kind of run with it
Yeah.
because it's be like, all right, you got the best data pool for us to pull on. These AI integrators are going to have a field day over there versus some other markets that are trying to use AI because they
Yeah.
see it as low-hanging fruit to optimize their operations. But the first step would almost be everyone on the ground has to change their behavior
Yeah.
and put the data in properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's pretty
Yeah.
funny that way. Do you mind to help the listeners kind of come understand where you're coming from? Because we're going to start talking more data stuff from an Office R&D perspective. Just give me an example of a day in your life, like in your role,
Yeah.
because then everyone can kind of be like, oh, okay, so he gets to touch this and see this and this,
Yeah.
So day in the life would be great,
Mm.
Ash.
No, I'll keep it short and sharp. It's the role is customer success, and initially when I got into customer success, it was quite hard to explain to our customers what is customer success. It's not an
Mm,
account manager, it is not a support person, but someone who is a strategic partner. And I love this role. If I reflect back on where I started, I um, like doing data analytics. You can really be into the numbers and don't want to talk to people, but I love the social aspect and really understanding
mm,
the business problems and really outcomes focus. And like what would make this role really successful for any customer success managers that are out there who are maybe looking into a role like this is when you work for software as a service company like Office R&D, or you've got Space IQ out there, you've got so many other softwares that do this. It is not a new thing. Uh, you are the main contact for your customer. You
yeah,
are there to listen, be empathetic, but also challenge your customers because, like to the point of AI, now there's a lot of pushback coming from customers saying, "Oh no, it's too much, or we don't have the data, or it'll be additional cost, or we love to have a reception in the front where we don't want bots talking to customers. We want to provide that face-to-face service." But you really need to challenge that status quo because staying stagnant is you can't do that. You have to move
yeah.
with technology, and
I
cost
heard
is a big
someone
thing.
say, do you want to be the new blockbuster? You know,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you don't jump on this stuff, it's like, oh wow, that's a huge statement. Yeah.
yeah. And you could be, and it's not saying you need to go in there and just adopt everything that's out there.
Mm,
You can, and then that's the beauty of technology. You can trial it in one location or for one type of product. For example, you might, um, for example, let's talk about sales, right? You need to get
mm,
revenue and customers coming in. So you could have an AI agent on your platform that, taking care of the repetitive tasks, someone interested in a product, rather than talking to a salesperson who might be working on a much larger deal. A chatbot agent could be smart enough to talk to them, inform them, and even to the point of, signing them up or booking that meeting room for them, and that the technology is already ready and it exists. It's just, I think it's an adoption challenge, and I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
agree. I think it's adoption for sure, and
yeah,
education,
yeah,
adoption and education. Yeah, because there's a bunch of tech that even JLL adopted our new office, and it was super sexy and great. And frankly, like there's this great technology room, no one uses it.
no one
You
uses,
know, like
yes.
let me rephrase that so I don't get in trouble. It does get used, and it's amazing.
But
But when
not
it was
enough.
originally built, there was a tech person budgeted to kind of help facilitate it, right? Which wasn't feasible long term, but because it was a lot of different screens, a lot of different ways you could leverage the room. We call it the NXT room, so it looks really dope as well. So it also looks cool when you tour clients and show
Yeah,
stuff, but because it was so technical, you found day to day people weren't using it. But now, fast forward a year after it was built, people are
yeah,
starting to train themselves to do it because they realize the value. It was
yeah,
just a slower adoption rate. And that's just kind of a random example of how
yeah,
that happens. But, with the Office R&D stuff, I'm always fascinated because I've known about you guys since the start of my co-working journey. Because a lot of the different operators use you on the back end, even if they brand it their own thing.
yeah.
Um, with this whole co-working stuff over the last few years, there's been so many different trends, post-COVID. I know you track a ton of stuff, but are there any key utilization things that specifically for co-working and flex that lately have almost been, the leading key things to keep an eye on for a profitable business, whether it be utilization, even areas that get used? I don't know, because I think
Yeah.
the areas one is interesting, especially for
Yeah.
landlords who are listening, because they're almost trying to cherry pick what really is sexy and works in a co-working space from an amenity perspective to put into their own building, whether it's with or without a co-working operator, you know?
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's interesting with our landlord clients, especially being in corporate real estate. Now, initially it was all about now wellness, and I think Australia does it really well, where end of
Yeah.
trip facilities are really good. And I personally, in the space that we're in, I love that fact that you can go in, put your bike there, have a shower. Um,
Yeah.
but but it is, I think it goes beyond that. It is a nice thing to have, like even have a free gym in the building. It would be quite a nice thing, but it's really what
Yeah.
gets into the people. And I think, like, and I'll come back to the data point. I think what's really missing is a focus on hospitality and community in the space, and what actually brings those people in. And then we are trying to track more and more of that. We already, in our system, like
Ooh.
we already have like community members portals, and we've got apps. But what we are trying to do more of now, and this is going to be a big year that we change this, is being able to track the data around how members engage in the space, and that really community tracking and seeing data on that, like how are members actually attending events, are they actually in the space, how are they moving around the space, like using check-in information, and all of that I think is very crucial, because once they're in the space, because all of the data really allows you as an operator to be able to be proactive and be prepared to have those sales and maybe retention conversations
Mm.
with customers. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to do: get new customers in, or retain existing customers, or and those existing customers to buy more. So how do you do that? You need to be able to really understand how those customers are using your space, what the demands are. A really good example I've seen and this is one of the reasons why we produce is one of our products called Workplace in Flex. It's really giving your large corporate customers in a workspace that might be in a big private office the ability to
Mm.
manage the space within their office. So they can book their own desks. They might have 50 people using a desk, a room of 20 people. Before COVID, pre-hybrid working, those customers might go in and go to a bigger co-working space or get their own space. But those 20 desks might only be used maximum, 60, 70, 80% of the time. So how do you actually get the data to be able to talk to those customers and say, well, actually, you don't need a bigger space, but you can use existing space, but then you can
Is
overflow.
random question. Is that the workplace stuff that you guys are investing in
Yeah.
from a UX UI perspective? So user interface, is that more for the key decision makers of that company to see as a dashboard, or is it app facing for an individual to also see? And the reason I'm asking is I almost feel like there's a bit of FOMO sometimes where imagine if on your app you could see, oh shit, these areas are being really utilized or used. I want to go use that one. Or like, people are booking this area on these days. Maybe it's a good day for me to come in because the collaborative area is quite
Yeah.
warm in terms of color coding or whatever. Or is it more back of house for property decisions, I guess?
It's more the latter. I mean, for a workplace product test booking one,
Mm.
that is visible for the users so they can see. And that's the whole idea, right? Because you want to come into the space, you want to see your colleagues that are in this space. You might want to sit next to your favorite person, or don't come in when your manager's in, right? For example. So you can actually do that in our product. But in a co-working at the moment, it's more in the back end. So we can see the information, the data, but the actual members of co-working spaces, they don't really get to see that information.
Yeah.
And I
The
think that's
re the
been a
reason
missing
I
piece.
Yeah, the reason I asked is I actually think that product would be super valuable for the Telstra and the banks of the world right now.
Yeah.
Because co-working aside, the fact that they're considering co-working as a Trojan horse or a vehicle to take care of their hibernating floors, that at some point they'll want them back. So that's the reason why they're entertaining conversations with someone like me, who when I say I'm a white label operator, I mean it in the true sense of the
Yeah.
word. Like we will run a co-working space that looks like your tenancy. We won't change too much. And then you just got to pick up the phone and give me a couple of months notice and I'll give it back to you. So it's kind of gives them that office strategy certainty because they're like, oh, we don't want to give away our floors long term because we might need them back. But we also don't want it just sitting there because it's costing us money. So I think the tools that you're developing actually have a place, rightfully so, with some of these large tenants that have a lot of hibernating space, especially tech tenants who are very forward thinking in terms of what kind of spaces should we be putting in for our employee satisfaction and gratification. Um, and to your point, retention, I think, is almost in this market more important than signing on new customers. Everyone can sign on a new customer, especially if it's a brand new fit
Mm.
out or operation, and especially if you're chucking heavy incentives or discounts at them, but then giving them such a good experience that you can upsell them back to the normal rate, not even upsell them to a higher rate, but what the rate should be according to your budget. Before you threw the discount at them to get them in, you got to give like an amazing experience, right? So, and that comes to hospitality. So, sorry, what's an example of how you measure hospitality success within a space? Because you were talking about how you were looking at member experience at hospo. An example metric of that, is it like lingering time in a certain area? They call it dwelling time in shopping centers
Yeah.
because that's important for them because the more someone dwells, the more they spend money. But for co-working, yeah, what is it?
I, I mean, we don't, OfficeRnD, we don't do it as well as we could be. And this is definitely the vision, that to get there so we can get the data. And
Yep.
ultimately, our customers want the data to be in OfficeRnD because we have every other data. So to
Mm.
actually blend that information in to your customers, total revenue that they've generated for you over the lifetime, we put it in there, and we're doing it as part of our experience hub. And I think AI is going to be a big part of that, to be able to put this pull the data in and to be able to produce those valuable insights. But if I
Yep.
speak to like one key metric is when it comes to like retention and being able to see how they're actually using the space. And I think this is something that I've only seen one or two customers, co-working customers do, is really utilizing those sensor technology out there to be able to
Yep.
see how
Yep.
offices are being moved. I mean, and this is, I'll throw this statistic at you, which was a bit of a surprise for me for co-working, the more, not
Mm.
the traditional private office operators, so service office operators, is that 70 to 80% of co-working businesses revenue is private office. Most of the
Yep.
co-working businesses that are,
Unfortunately, which
yeah,
makes it very hard to innovate and change. But yeah,
yes.
sorry, keep going.
But and that's exactly the point, because you've got this big space. So you've got this, they're the ones, they're the spaces that are generating your revenue. You want to be more creative and have more of those hot desk and flexible
Mm.
areas, or like that book a day office. But the cream, the base is here. That is just a cream for you. So how do you actually balance that out? So I think, and our data, our new Flex Index report that we've just released, especially for APAC, is quite interesting to see in there that the revenue per occupied desk, for when you look at like private offices, for example, it's not improving. It is actually going down in
Mm.
APAC. And
Mm.
so to me, when I look at the data, it looks like,
Despite rents going up, so the
yeah,
operator's kind of screwed, you know?
yes. So you're trying to be more flexible, offer those more flexible products, and get other businesses in the door. But then ultimately, your private offices are your main revenue
Hey
generator.
Ash, these episodes are meant to only go to 30 minutes, but I'm making an executive host decision. We're going to 40 because I actually think this is a point I really want to unwrap with you. So you don't feel rushed. We're going to
No
just keep
worries.
pushing through because I want to talk to AI as well about it. But you hit a really interesting point around how majority of that income comes from private offices, right? And we need to figure out different areas to kind of monetize. From a feasibility perspective, part of the reason for that is two things. One, over the last, 3 to 5 years, especially, there's been a higher demand from enterprise style clients who want the private offices, right?
Yeah.
So it almost used to be, let's say, out of a floor plan, a traditional
Mm,
2,000 square meter floor plan, let's say, 60% of that NLA is allocated to desks. That allocation used to be almost 60/40 private offices to hot desk.
yeah.
Now it's kind of like 80/20, 90/10, all private office because of the customers that were starting to buy it were these bigger companies who wanted satellite offices, not really the startups. And the advantage of it historically in a good market, which is tougher now, is that when you look at all the different income streams for a co-working operator, those private offices are the most reliable because you
No.
license them out 12 months plus at a time, sometimes 24 months.
Yeah.
I've seen 36-month deals, almost like a spec suite, as long as you bake into the clauses those escalations so you're not
Yeah.
having a low rate that doesn't increase because of inflation and escalations each year. So they're much more reliable than, say, trying to forecast more meeting rooms or event space revenue because they're booked per hour. I mean, you can
Mm,
do it, and this is where hospitality becomes interesting because the better the experience you provide, the more you can bank on that income. I don't really see it very well done in Australia in the sense of monetizing meeting rooms and event spaces, but I am very aware there are amazing brands like Convene over, in the UK and London and stuff like that that do it well, albeit I think it's a very different market over there.
yeah.
Those bookable space. I'm not too sure if that model would work here in Australia just because it's a bit different, but I welcome them coming here and proving everyone wrong and showing us it works because the meeting rooms look great on a spreadsheet because they actually make
Mm,
more money per square meter than a private office, but they're booked per hour. So you're kind
yeah.
of
The
almost
utilization
irresponsible
problem,
if you
right?
forecast that you're booking the shit out of them. You know what I mean? Because you
Yeah.
may not. Um, so then it's actually a scenario where the brand that you have, like some of the brands in Australia, whether it's a Hub Australia or a Commons, an IWG, even a WeWork, like the strength of the brand could be a way to monetize, like create different channels of income, like virtual income. And I feel like that's how some of these sites stack up a bit better. Because you're right, if it's purely desk revenue, or majority desk revenue, and desk rates are going lower.
Yeah.
And that's because of the sell pressure. Because I do feel like co-working is getting a little saturated in certain markets. So they're all competing, therefore discounting, which is kind of, counterintuitive because your rents are still going up 3.7% every year, especially in Australia. So it's kind of like your model's broken. And CapEx is getting more expensive. So to
Yeah.
build the thing, it costs twice as much in this market in APAC now because of build costs. So suddenly the money that you could save on the incentive you get in Australia to build that fit out to apply to your operating costs the first year of ramp up, you don't have anymore. So it gets tougher. It's like, what do you do?
Mm,
Right. And I think everyone's trying to figure out what do they do to increase the margins.
yeah.
For me, I think, unbiased, I think content creation's a new channel of income for a lot of these operators. You got a strong brand, you got a strong sense of eyeballs. Is there a way you can monetize that in a thoughtful way, like through brand sponsorships or whatnot? That's a new source of income.
Yeah.
Media rooms, I think, should be big. Like instead of doing podcasts like this, sometimes I think co-working spaces should have not just a podcast room, but a media room. Like, have like listen to your favorite podcast on Spotify, watch the video. It's high quality and it's very engaging when it's video tech, and that's an example of a meeting room that'll get booked three,
Yeah.
4 hours at a time. But to your point, like when you're seeing how some of these things need to change from the data that you track, are you seeing any glimmers of innovation or hope or things that are helping or changing in that space?
I think in Australia, it is quite slow and stuck in the old ways. Quite a few co-working spaces, for example, meeting rooms you mentioned, they
Mm,
provide this, hey, well, it's all part of the package. We don't want to worry about trying to monetize the space. It's just part of the
mm,
package. You pay us a premium for private office, you get all the meeting room booking, and that's done. Where some of the ones that are trying to sell these meeting rooms per hour, they are getting good revenue. But again, I think the utilization is not 20, 30, 40% above. It's quite low. So most of the time,
yeah,
those spaces are sitting there empty. And I think there really is an opportunity to change those spaces and change the way it's being used. In terms of the podcast rooms, media rooms, I've only come across like maybe only a handful of co-working spaces that actually offer them. And I think you'll agree with that is you don't really
mm,
see this as a common thing. And we've got one customer, their customers are e-commerce. So
mm,
they're in the suburbs. They're called, I think I can mention their name, Click Collective. They use us. So they're not
yep,
a typical co-working customer, but in terms of their spaces, they have large warehouses, but beautifully fit out. And you can have a co-working business private office in there, as well as a fashion designer doing a runway and a photo shoot. And
that's cool.
that is so
Mm,
varied, and it is amazing because they provide the space, the technology for you to do that rather than trying to build your own studio to do that. And it's fun as well. So it provides so much variety in the space.
mm,
And they're the ones that are already doing it. And another one, like you talked about podcasts, we've got a customer in Sydney. They've got podcast rooms. They themselves record podcasts, which is very fascinating because then what they do is they actually talk to their customer members in their spaces and as a way to promote them. So they're actually using their customers and marketing them on their behalf, as well as
yeah.
promoting their spaces. And I think that is amazing.
I think like that room, for example, if you do it right, it could be a building amenity. Because I feel like professional
Yeah,
corporate content creation is on the rise. Like Goldman Sachs has pegged that economy to hit $500 billion in the next few years. So it's growing. And you look at the banks like Commonwealth Bank Australia, ANZ, they're
yeah,
all hiring content creators and not just TikTokers and
yeah,
Instagrammers. It's like we're going to invest in this room where you can live stream stuff, shoot great content. They all agree that humanizing their brand is super important and authenticity is key. So even when you go on LinkedIn and forget the crap I put out there, which is like very basic stuff because it's just me and my camera,
but very
you
human.
see a lot of these C-level execs starting to get put in front of the camera. Like they're
Yeah,
communicating to their target audience. I think that's huge. So if that room is industry agnostic. Like if you
yeah,
invest in it, so it's not just a two-person meeting room turned into a podcast studio with these two old mics that you spent no money on, but it looks cool, into a 4 to 6 P room, size room or bigger, where you've got, green screens or curtains or nice furniture in there, lighting. I think, that would go gangbusters because no one's really got a room like that. I think it takes away that obstacle or that friction point not to create content. And yeah,
yeah,
I think that could be a good one. But yeah, it's interesting. I do feel like to offset some of these cost pressures, the future of flex, especially if you actually partner with a landlord, is to push some of those costs into outgoings, which is
yeah,
why it is really important the technology, the data that you track in terms of utilization of different spaces. If OfficeRnD can help a co-working operator that has a amenity space open to the tenants, that a lot of tenants use said amenities, then there's a case to be made going, hey, this cost to run this area or this area shouldn't be purely in the flex P&L as our operating costs.
yeah,
If your tenants are actually using it because it's been designed that way, we we should get a couple of bucks a square meter, pushed into the building outgoings because we got
yeah,
proof that all the tenants use it versus
yeah.
pretending the tenants will use it, no proof, putting the cost into outgoings and getting everyone pissed
Mm.
off. You know what I mean?
I've got one customer in
Um,
New Zealand that's already like doing something similar. They do it for the events spaces. They're a landlord developer in Auckland, but they operate a co-working space.
mm,
And 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 if I reflect back on their space, I think that is one of the best examples of a really good engaging co-working space. It's very innovative, and but it is really good community to the point where you can go get a cafe and they do this beautiful coffee art for you and they really make you feel special. Those little things, but then they said about 20 to 30% of their revenue in some months could be coming from events, bookings, and catering, but a lot of the time it's not the co-working members that are booking those spaces. It's the other traditional tenants in the other buildings the landlord has. So, but they're trying to kind of leverage that and
Sure.
get them to book the space and generate revenues rather than them going out of the outside and trying to run those events. They just all bring it in-house, and they
Mm.
have that relationship with those customers, so they can go curate the spaces for them, do everything for them. They just turn up and everything is
Yeah.
organized.
See, that works and that would work in Australia if you have a gun salesperson or a team that is experienced not in selling offices, but selling an event space, right?
Yes.
Because that's a very different sales process. You almost need to you can't just react to leads coming in and being like, I hope this quarter is going to be a good quarter because people need event space and book it with us just because it's convenient in the building. You almost need to proactively sell it and
Proactively,
be like,
yeah.
hey, okay, these 10 companies in the area have budget for gatherings, events. Let's go proactively approach them and package together an experience with it, or make sure they do their annual catch up here. Like
Yeah,
someone needs to be thinking about these things and pairing it with an experience so that they use it. And if you do that enough, then you can start relying on that bookable income from event spaces, especially. Whereas I feel like sometimes, people may think if we just put it in there as part of our fit out, build it and they will come. No, I
yes,
don't I
doesn't
don't think
work.
so, unfortunately.
No, and
Um, so sorry, go. Sorry,
no,
go.
I was about to add is that this is where like data is so important, and being able to use AI to be able to like mine the data and be able to
Mm,
do the research for you, see what these companies are doing. Like it's a trend, right? Over Christmas time, it's a big event. A lot of
yep.
events are happening, but then what about the rest of the year, right? Businesses run general meetings, they have events, they have external customers coming into the spaces. So like, how do you actually go out and market that? Hey, our spaces can actually allow you to bring those external guests to have a meeting here. We'll do all the coffee catering for you, provide the space, everything's taken care of. You just turn up, the technology will work, the space will work. And like, we are already investing in those technology. Like, for example, we released the visitor management platform. We are linking it with our e-commerce tool, and soon there'll be AI in there. So just be able to delve into that and provide the service. And this is where technology can really help with
Right.
AI, and being able to go out and research and gather which customers might be needing
So you're
these
using
services.
you're investing and leveraging AI to try and get in front of this. How do we pair experiences or, all these kind of things with some of these spaces to help them move, essentially, like be sold. I think that's great. That's
Yeah,
really important, man.
and I think the future is AI and how we use it. We already are putting it into our product, and I think just one snippet of what we're doing is for our data platform. Our customers that use
Mm,
it, obviously we've got different aspects of the system. More reports will be available, but also being able to query data directly in using AI language. So just being able to, you just talk to, I want to understand what is my average revenue per desk for the last 2 months. Because not everyone
mm.
is a data scientist or a analyst, and I think this is why there's a lot of fear out there. Operators that really know how to do really good hospitality and hoteling, but they're not too good with the data and being able to delve into
Yeah.
it. And this is where we come in to provide that for you.
I mean, data's king and queen right now, so it totally makes sense to partner and work with you in some capacity. Because also a strength that JLL has is a lot of people just work with us, frankly, because they want access to the research and everything,
Yeah,
the bigger machine. So it's almost like now is the time to work with OfficeRnD, even on the most basic and smallest capacity, because then you get access to someone amazing like yourself, Ash, who does everything and can give you like very wide insights that'll help you with your decisions in this kind of scary time, you know? So thank you for your
yeah.
time, man. And we'll speak to you again soon. But thanks everyone for listening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Tashi. Speak soon. Bye bye.
You did awesome, man. That was great.